You ever met someone who swears they are the most caring, the most understanding, even calling themselves an empath? Yet every time you walk away from them, you feel drained, doubted, or even invisible. That's the dangerous paradox of dealing with narcissists who believe they're empathic. On the surface, they mirror kindness, they copy compassion, and they perform concern so convincingly that even the most self-aware person can start to question themselves. But here's the truth: they don't feel your pain, they study it. They don't connect to your emotions, they use them. And if you've ever wondered why you feel guilty, confused, or silenced in their presence, then this message is for you. Because today, we're going to expose exactly how these self-proclaimed empaths twist reality, and more importantly, how you can protect your peace without falling into their trap. Stay with me until the very end, because what you'll discover might just change the way you see every relationship in your life. And if you've ever had an experience like this, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to subscribe, because this journey of truth and healing is just getting started. The paradox of the so-called empathic narcissist is one of the most confusing and exhausting experiences a person can face. On the surface, you meet someone who seems unusually aware of emotions, someone who claims to care deeply, who speaks the language of compassion, and who even prides themselves on being more sensitive than others. They will often tell you outright, "I just feel things more than most people," or "I've always been an empath." And at first you might believe them because their words sound convincing. They seem to notice small details, they nod at the right times, they echo your emotions back to you. And for a while, it feels like they understand you. But if you spend enough time around them, cracks start to appear in the mask. What felt like empathy slowly begins to feel like performance. What looked like compassion starts to feel like calculation. You realize they're not truly moved by your feelings, they're merely studying them, rehearsing them, and using them when it benefits their image. This is the paradox. A person who believes, or at least insists, that they are deeply compassionate, yet their actions constantly betray the opposite truth. To understand why this happens, we need to look at how narcissism works. True empathy is not simply knowing what someone feels, it's actually feeling with them. It requires stepping outside of your own ego, quieting your own needs, and making space for someone else's inner world. Narcissists, however, are trapped in a cycle of self-absorption. They are wired to filter everything through the lens of, "What does this mean for me?" Even when they appear to be listening, their mind is calculating how they look, how they sound, how their response will affect the way others see them. Yet because they crave admiration, they've learned that wearing the mask of empathy is one of the fastest ways to be seen as virtuous, enlightened, or even superior. By calling themselves empathic, they elevate their self-image while avoiding the harder truth that they are emotionally disconnected. One of the clearest signs of this paradox is inconsistency. When you're in pain, a truly empathic person will remain present with you even if they don't fully understand. They may not say the perfect thing, but their warmth feels real. The empathic narcissist, on the other hand, is only empathic when the spotlight is on them. If comforting you makes them look good, if helping you gains them approval, or if showing compassion wins them a role in your life, they'll put on the performance. But as soon as empathy costs them something, as soon as it requires sacrifice or goes unnoticed, their mask slips. They may become cold, dismissive, or even angry that you dared to expect too much. In that moment, their belief in their own compassion collides with the reality of their behavior, and the paradox is revealed. Another layer to this paradox is projection. Empathic narcissists often accuse others of lacking the very thing they pretend to embody. If you ever call them out for being insensitive, they may twist it back on you with statements like, I'm the one who cares the most. You're just too closed off to see it. Or you're the one without empathy. This not only confuses you, but also strengthens their illusion, because they genuinely convince themselves that they are the more compassionate one. They rewrite reality so that any cracks in their behavior are blamed on others, while they maintain the identity of the wounded, misunderstood empath. It's a manipulation tactic, but it's also self-deception. They need to believe in their empathy because facing the emptiness underneath would shatter their fragile self-image. This creates a dangerous cycle for those around them. At first, you may be drawn to their apparent sensitivity. You may even admire how in touch they seem with emotions. But over time, you begin to feel unseen. You notice that when you're struggling, their responses feel rehearsed rather than heartfelt. You notice that they talk about empathy more than they live it. You notice that their compassion disappears the moment it doesn't serve them. And this leaves you questioning yourself. Am I expecting too much? Am I being ungrateful? Why do I feel so alone when I'm with someone who claims to understand me so deeply? That self-doubt is exactly how the paradox keeps its power. The narcissist insists they are empathic, while your lived experience tells you otherwise. The contradiction pulls at you until you're tangled in confusion. The paradox of the empathic narcissist also explains why many people stay entangled with them longer than they should, because every now and then the performance feels real. They may do something kind, offer a moving speech, or show up for you in a way that convinces you that maybe you misjudged them. You cling to those moments because they give you hope. You tell yourself they really do care, they just struggle to show it. But those moments are often strategic. They come when the narcissist senses you're slipping away, when they need to reel you back in, or when they need to repair their image. True empathy is steady, even when it's imperfect. False sympathy is sporadic, showing up only when it benefits the person delivering it. So how do you deal with this paradox? First, you need to name it for what it is. Recognize that someone can believe they're empathic without actually embodying empathy. Their self-perception does not equal reality. Second, trust your emotional experience over their words. If you consistently feel unseen, drained, or invalidated in their presence, that is your truth, regardless of what they claim. Third, understand that you cannot argue them into self-awareness. Explaining, proving, or defending your feelings will only feed their need to be right. Instead, protect your boundaries. Limit how much emotional labor you give them. Keep your expectations grounded in reality, not in the illusion they present. Most importantly, remember that the paradox belongs to them, not to you. You are not cold, ungrateful, or unkind for noticing the gap between their words and actions. You are not wrong for expecting empathy to feel real rather than staged. The fact that you see the contradiction means you are grounded in reality. And that's the very thing the empathic narcissist tries to blur, your ability to trust yourself. The antidote to their paradox is clarity. By seeing through the performance, you take back the power to decide who truly deserves your emotional trust. In the end, the paradox of the empathic narcissist teaches us something vital. Empathy is not a label you wear, it's a practice you live. It cannot be faked consistently, because real empathy requires sacrifice, humility, and the willingness to feel another person's truth without making it about yourself. Narcissists may borrow the language of empathy, but they cannot sustain its reality. And once you see that clearly, you are free to step out of the confusion and into the peace of authentic connection. Connection with people who don't just say they care, but who prove it quietly, steadily, and sincerely. One of the greatest challenges when dealing with narcissists who claim to be empathic is learning to tell the difference between what is merely mimicry and what is genuine empathy. At first glance, the two can look almost identical. A narcissist may mirror your body language, echo your emotions, and even repeat back to you the very words you've used to describe your feelings. They may sigh at the right moment, shake their head in sympathy, or even shed a tear when you share something painful. It feels convincing, almost too convincing, and that is the first clue. What you're experiencing in those moments is not empathy. It's a performance. It is empathy rehearsed, not empathy lived. True empathy cannot be manufactured. It comes from a place deep within the soul where your inner world makes room for the pain, the joy, or the struggle of another human being. When someone with real empathy listens to you, you feel it not just in their words, but in their energy. Their presence carries patience. Their eyes soften with sincerity. They don't need to announce that they understand. You sense it in the quiet,
Calm, steady, and soulful, deep, with a tone that feels both compassionate and powerful, guiding the listener like a spiritual awakening. The way they hold space for you. Real empathy does not rush to fix, correct, or redirect the focus back to themselves. It breathes with you, it feels with you, and it honors the moment as yours, not theirs. In contrast, mimicry feels polished but empty. The narcissist has studied emotional cues the way an actor studies a script. They know when to frown, when to nod, when to say, "I understand," and when to put their hand on your shoulder. But if you look closely, you'll notice the gaps. Their timing is slightly off, as if they are following a checklist. Their reactions are often exaggerated, as though they're trying too hard to look moved. And perhaps most telling, the focus somehow always shifts back to them. Instead of staying with your pain, they'll tell a long story about how they went through something worse. Instead of honoring your joy, they'll remind you how they once achieved something even bigger. Their version of empathy is a mirror, but it reflects themselves more than it reflects you. This is where so many people get trapped. Mimicked empathy feels good in the beginning, especially if you've been longing for connection. You might mistake their attentiveness for genuine care. After all, they say the right words, don't they? They look the part, don't they? But over time, you notice something unsettling. No matter how much they empathize, you don't feel seen. You feel more like an audience member than a participant. It's as if your emotions are being used as material for their performance, rather than being cherished for what they truly are. That is the subtle but powerful difference between mimicry and true empathy. One way to spot mimicry is to pay attention to consistency. Genuine empathy is steady. Even when the person is tired, distracted, or unsure of what to say, their care remains. They may not always have the perfect words, but their warmth never disappears. Mimicked empathy, on the other hand, shows up in bursts. It is there when it benefits the narcissist, when others are watching, or when they want to prove themselves. But the moment the spotlight fades, so does their compassion. They may grow impatient with your feelings, dismissive of your pain, or even irritated that you're still upset. This inconsistency reveals the truth. Their empathy was never about you. It was about them. Another way to tell the difference is to watch how they respond when empathy costs them something. A truly empathic person is willing to sacrifice time, energy, or even convenience for the sake of another. They will sit with you in silence when you need comfort, even if they'd rather be doing something else. They will celebrate your victories, even if they feel insecure about their own. They will respect your pain without turning it into a competition. Mimicked empathy collapses the moment sacrifice is required. If your sadness takes too long to heal, the narcissist grows restless. If your joy threatens their sense of superiority, they grow bitter. If your needs require them to step aside, they find a way to make it about themselves again. This is the soul-level difference. Empathy flows from love, while mimicry flows from ego. Empathy is selfless. Mimicry is self-serving. Empathy holds you. Mimicry performs for you. The danger of mimicry is that it can make you doubt your own perception. Because narcissists are skilled at performance, you might question whether you're being unfair or too demanding. You might tell yourself, maybe they really do care, maybe I just don't see it. But your body knows, your heart knows. True empathy leaves you feeling lighter, calmer, and understood. Mimicry leaves you feeling drained, confused, and strangely alone, even after a long conversation. Your inner world is the best compass for telling the difference. When you recognize mimicry for what it is, you take away its power. You stop mistaking performance for presence. You stop giving endless chances to someone who only shows up when it benefits them. Most importantly, you stop doubting your own intuition. Because the truth is, real empathy doesn't need to be declared. It doesn't need a spotlight, it doesn't demand credit, and it doesn't vanish when it's inconvenient. Real empathy is lived quietly, deeply, and consistently. It is something you feel at the soul, not something that can be mimicked with rehearsed lines. The next time you encounter someone who claims to be highly empathic but leaves you feeling unseen, remember this. Empathy is not in the words spoken. It is in the life lived. Mimicry may fool the eye for a while, but it can never reach the heart. And once you've tasted the difference, you'll never mistake one for the other again. If there is one thing a narcissist craves more than anything, it is validation. They hunger for admiration, for recognition, for an image that looks flawless to the outside world. And what better way to build that image than by claiming the ultimate badge of compassion, empathy? In a society that praises kindness, celebrates sensitivity, and views emotional awareness as a mark of wisdom, declaring oneself to be empathic becomes a powerful tool. For a narcissist, it's not about actually feeling empathy, it's about being seen as the kind of person who does. It's about image, not reality. And the more they can convince you and themselves that they are uniquely compassionate, the more control they gain. At the root of this claim is insecurity. Deep down, narcissists often feel empty, disconnected, and inadequate. They struggle to form authentic connections, but they don't want to be seen as lacking. So, they create a mask. By presenting themselves as empathic, they disguise their emptiness with a cloak of sensitivity. This identity not only protects them from being exposed, but also wins them praise. Who would dare to accuse a self-proclaimed empath of being selfish? Who would question someone who insists they are deeply in tune with the emotions of others? By claiming empathy, they secure a kind of immunity against criticism. Another hidden motive lies in superiority. Narcissists do not just want to be equal to others, they want to be above them. And empathy, when claimed as a personal trait, becomes a weapon of comparison. They might say things like, "I just feel more deeply than other people," or "Most people don't understand emotions the way I do." Notice the subtle message here. They are not just kind, they are better. Their supposed empathy becomes another way to elevate themselves, to create a hierarchy in which they sit at the top as the most sensitive, the most aware, the most enlightened. In this way, their claim to empathy is less about compassion and more about pride. This is also why many narcissists attach their identity to spiritual or healing roles. They may call themselves healers, guides, or deeply spiritual souls. They may insist they have a unique gift for understanding others. But if you look closely, their actions don't match their words. They may preach compassion while dismissing your pain. They may offer comfort in public while ignoring you in private.
They may even belittle you when your emotions threaten to take attention away from them. Their empathy is not a service to others, it's a stage for themselves. Validation plays another critical role here. Narcissists survive on external praise. Without it, they feel unstable, almost hollow. Claiming empathy ensures a constant stream of approval. People admire empathetic individuals. People trust them, confide in them, and look up to them. By wearing this identity, narcissists gain access to admiration and intimacy they couldn't earn otherwise. They may say, "I just want to help," but what they really mean is, "I just want to be admired for helping." The spotlight, not the connection, is their true goal. It's also important to understand that many narcissists genuinely believe their own claims. Because self-deception is part of their survival, they may truly convince themselves that they are empathic. If they can mimic empathy well enough, if they can rehearse the words and gestures, they start to internalize the illusion. This is why arguing with them rarely works. They are not lying in the simple sense, they are living inside a lie they've built for themselves. Their sense of self depends on maintaining this illusion. To admit otherwise would force them to face the emptiness they've worked so hard to cover up. But there's a darker motive too. By claiming empathy, narcissists gain leverage. When people believe they are compassionate, they lower their defenses. They open up, they trust, and they give the narcissist access to their most vulnerable parts. And once that access is granted, the narcissist can use it for control. Your fears,
your insecurities, your secrets, all become tools for manipulation. They may comfort you in one moment and weaponize your pain in the next. This is one of the most dangerous aspects of their claim because it transforms empathy from a gift into a trap. So, how can you tell when empathy is being claimed for image rather than lived in reality? Watch for what happens when admiration is not on the line. A narcissist will perform empathy when others are watching, when it secures approval, or when it boosts their superiority. But when no one is around, when empathy requires quiet sacrifice, their mask often falls away. They may grow dismissive, impatient, or even cold. True empathy, by contrast, does not need an audience. It shows up in the unseen moments, in the small sacrifices, in the quiet support that never seeks recognition. It's also revealing to notice how they react when you do not validate their claim. If you question their empathy, if you fail to admire them for it, you'll often see anger, defensiveness, or even punishment. A truly empathic person might feel hurt, but they won't need to attack you to prove themselves. The narcissist, however, feels threatened because their self-image is at stake. Their reaction exposes the truth. It was never about your feelings, it was always about their ego. Understanding this hidden motive is liberating because it allows you to step out of the trap. You no longer need to waste energy trying to reconcile their words with their actions. You no longer need to convince yourself that they must mean well just because they claim to. Instead, you can judge by reality. How do they act when no one is watching? How do they treat you when your needs don't benefit them? Do you feel truly understood, or do you feel used? These questions cut through the illusion. At the end of the day, narcissists claim empathy for the same reason they claim many other admirable traits. It feeds the image they want to project. But empathy is not an image. It is not a badge to be worn or a title to be claimed. It is a living practice, proven through consistency, sacrifice, and presence. Narcissists may call themselves empathic, but their hidden motives will always reveal otherwise. Once you see this clearly, you are free to stop chasing words and start trusting actions. And that clarity is the first step to protecting your peace. One of the most important steps in protecting yourself from narcissists who claim empathy is learning how to spot the red flags of false compassion. On the surface, their words might sound sincere, their gestures may look thoughtful, and their image might appear flawless. But if you look closely, you'll see patterns that reveal the truth. These signs often show up not in the big moments, but in the small, everyday interactions. And once you learn to recognize them, you'll never mistake mimicry for genuine care again. The first red flag is conditional empathy. Real empathy does not pick and choose when to show up. It is steady, even when it's inconvenient. But false empathy vanishes the moment it costs the narcissist something. If listening to your pain interrupts their schedule, if supporting you requires sacrifice, or if comforting you doesn't earn them attention, their concern quickly disappears. They might dismiss you with phrases like, "You're overreacting," or "I don't have time for this right now." Or worse, they may become irritated that you dared to burden them with your emotions. This is one of the most clearest signs that their empathy is not rooted in love, but in self-interest. Another red flag is performance-based compassion. Pay attention to when their empathy shows up. Does it appear more in public than in private? Do they seem more caring when others are watching, only to withdraw once the audience is gone? Narcissists love the image of being the kind, supportive friend or partner because it wins them admiration. They may rush to comfort you in front of others, offering dramatic displays of care, but later, when the lights dim, you'll notice their warmth is gone. True empathy doesn't need a stage. False empathy thrives on one. The third red flag is self-centered storytelling. When you share your struggles, instead of truly listening, they hijack the conversation with their own tales. They may say, "I know exactly how you feel," only to launch into a long narrative about themselves. The spotlight shifts from your pain to their experiences, leaving you feeling unheard. Genuine empathy holds space for your story. False empathy uses your story as a springboard for theirs. Another subtle but telling sign is impatience. Real empathy requires presence, patience, and the ability to sit with someone in discomfort without rushing the process. False empathy, however, has a time limit. A narcissist may offer comfort briefly, but if your healing takes longer than they expect, they grow restless. They may pressure you to just move on or accuse you of being dramatic. Their concern is only available in short bursts, revealing that it's less about your needs and more about their convenience. Red flag number 5, disappearing empathy in moments of vulnerability. Notice what happens when you are at your lowest, when you're sick, heartbroken, or deeply stressed. A truly empathic person becomes more present, offering stability and care. A narcissist often withdraws, sometimes even punishes you for being vulnerable. They may ignore your calls, avoid helping, or make you feel guilty for needing support. Their so-called empathy vanishes right when it matters most. A sixth red flag is competitiveness in suffering. When you share something painful, instead of validating your feelings, they may one-up you with their own hardships. If you say you're tired, they're exhausted. If you're hurting, they're hurting more. This pattern reveals their inability to step outside themselves. Real empathy focuses on the other. False empathy always circles back to the self. The seventh red flag is weaponized empathy. Sometimes narcissists will use your emotions against you. They may listen closely when you're vulnerable, only to bring those details back later as ammunition. For example, if you shared a fear or insecurity, They might throw it in your face during an argument, saying something like, "No wonder you're always insecure. You can't handle anything." Instead of protecting your vulnerability, they exploit it. That is not empathy. It's manipulation, disguised as care. Another important sign is inconsistency between words and actions. A narcissist may say all the right things. "I care about you, I'm here for you, I understand." But when you look at their behavior, it doesn't match. They forget to show up when you need them. They ignore your requests for help. They fail to follow through on promises. Their empathy is loud in speech, but silent in action. True empathy is proven in what a person does, not in what they claim. Red flag number 9, lack of joy in your joy. Empathy is not just about sharing pain, it's about sharing happiness. A genuine empathic person celebrates with you wholeheartedly. But a narcissist's false empathy tends to disappear when you succeed. Instead of being happy for you, they downplay your achievements, change the subject, or find a way to make it about themselves. Their inability to share in your joy is a powerful indicator that their empathy is not real. Another telling red flag is the guilt trap. False empathy often comes with strings attached. They might act kind or supportive in one moment, but later remind you of it in a way that makes you feel indebted. They might say things like, "After everything I've done for you, you don't appreciate me." Their supposed empathy becomes a debt you are expected to repay, rather than a gift freely given. True empathy never demands repayment. Red flag number 11, selective memory. A narcissist may conveniently forget your needs or dismiss your experiences, even after you've shared them many times. They may brush off your struggles as unimportant or claim they never knew how you felt. But strangely, they always remember when you failed to admire them. Their memory works in ways that protect their ego, not your feelings. And finally, the most obvious red flag, you consistently feel worse after seeking their support. This may be the simplest yet most powerful test. When you share your heart with someone truly empathic, you feel lighter, safer, and understood. When you share with someone offering false empathy, you feel heavier, guilty, or drained. That feeling is your truth. It tells you more than their words.
Calm, steady, and soulful, deep. Ever could. Learning these red flags is not about becoming cynical. It's about becoming wise. Narcissists will always claim empathy because it's one of the easiest ways to disguise self-interest, but their actions will reveal the truth. Empathy that vanishes when it doesn't benefit them is not empathy at all. It is mimicry, performance, and control. And the sooner you recognize the signs, the sooner you can protect your energy, guard your heart, and seek the kind of connection that is genuine, steady, and life-giving. Gaslighting with empathy is one of the most confusing and exhausting tactics a narcissist will ever use, because it flips the very thing that makes you human, your heart, into a weapon against you. A narcissist who claims to be empathic often uses this trick when they feel cornered or exposed. Instead of taking responsibility for their lack of care, they will project it onto you, accusing you of being cold, unfeeling, or selfish. They might say things like, "You don't care about me at all," or "If you really had empathy, you'd see how much I'm suffering." On the surface, these words sound like a cry for connection, but underneath, they are a carefully laid trap designed to make you question yourself. This is how gaslighting works. You begin to wonder if you truly are too harsh, too insensitive, too distant, even when you're the one constantly giving. Over time, this erodes your confidence in your own kindness and blurs your sense of truth.
The key sign of gaslighting with empathy is that their accusations always come when your boundaries threaten their control. It's not about emotional honesty, it's about keeping you in a cycle of guilt and self-doubt, so they can continue to pull the strings. The trap of over-explaining is one of the easiest ways an empath falls deeper into a narcissist web, because it feels natural to want to clear misunderstandings, to show your heart, to prove that your intentions are good. But with a narcissist, every explanation you give becomes fuel for their control. The more you try to prove your feelings, the more you hand them the script to twist. They will take your words, reshape them, and throw them back at you, making you feel as if your empathy is never enough or always in question. You might find yourself repeating the same points again and again, desperately hoping they will finally see your love or your care. But what really happens is the opposite. They gain power while you drain yourself. Over-explaining doesn't convince them, it convinces you that you must constantly defend yourself, as if you are on trial for your own humanity. And that's the trap. A person with true empathy doesn't need paragraphs of proof. They feel it in your presence, your actions, your consistency. With a narcissist, no amount of explaining will ever satisfy them, because the goal was never understanding, it was control. Protecting your emotional energy is one of the most essential yet difficult steps when you've been entangled with someone who thrives on manipulation and false displays of care. Narcissists often create a cycle of what could be called pseudo-empathy, where they mimic the gestures and words of compassion without ever embodying the true spirit of it. They may appear attentive in one moment, only to dismiss or belittle you the next. They may offer comfort, but only if it makes them look good. And when their empathy vanishes the moment it no longer benefits them, you're left feeling confused, drained, and doubting your own sense of reality. This is where boundaries become your lifeline, not as walls to shut yourself off from the world, but as shields that protect your spirit from being repeatedly pierced by their cycles. To protect your emotional energy, you must begin by recognizing that not everyone who uses the language of care has the heart of care. Words can be rehearsed, actions can be strategic, and attention can be transactional. When you notice that their empathy feels conditional, when you sense that your vulnerabilities are later used against you, or when you feel weaker rather than stronger after an interaction, these are your red flags that their pseudo-empathy is at play. The first practical boundary is internal, refusing to give endless explanations for your feelings. Over-explaining is the fastest way to pour your energy into a void. Narcissists don't seek to understand, they seek to win. Every explanation you offer only gives them material to twist, and every attempt to justify yourself traps you deeper in their frame. Instead, practice giving simple, firm responses. A calm, "This is how I feel," is more powerful than a 10-minute defense because it asserts your right to your emotions without opening the door to manipulation. Protecting your energy means recognizing that you don't owe anyone a courtroom performance for the reality of your heart. Another boundary is emotional detachment in the presence of manipulation. This doesn't mean becoming cold or heartless, but it does mean refusing to let their staged tears, sudden guilt trips, or dramatic shifts in tone dictate your inner state. If you notice that your mood rises and falls with their behavior, you've given them too much control over your energy. A practical step here is to pause before reacting. When they use pseudo-empathy, phrases like, "I care so much about you, but you're so ungrateful," train yourself to hear the contradiction. The care is canceled by the attack. Instead of defending yourself, acknowledge the tactic silently and choose not to engage with the bait. Your silence, your calm presence, your refusal to be pulled into their storm, that is energy protection in action. Physical boundaries are just as important as emotional ones. You cannot expect to maintain your strength if you spend constant time in draining environments. Protecting your energy may mean limiting how often you answer their calls, how quickly you respond to their messages, or how available you make yourself in person. It might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've been conditioned to equate boundaries with rejection or coldness, but in reality, boundaries are a form of respect for yourself and for your relationships. By setting limits on when and how you engage, you train yourself to conserve your emotional reserves for people and situations that deserve them. The narcissist may push back, accuse you of being selfish, or try to shame you for pulling away. But remember, their resistance to your boundaries is the proof of why those boundaries are necessary in the first place. Self-reflection is another vital layer of protection. Many empaths are drawn into cycles with narcissists because of their own deep desire to be seen and understood. The pseudo-empathy of the narcissist plays directly into this longing, offering just enough validation to keep you hooked. By reflecting honestly on your own patterns, you begin to break the cycle. Ask yourself, do I stay because I keep hoping they'll change? Do I confuse crumbs of care for genuine compassion? Do I explain myself endlessly because I want them to finally see me? Protecting your energy requires you seeing these patterns clearly and reminding yourself that you don't need validation from someone who profits from your exhaustion. Another practice is cultivating environments that replenish rather than deplete you. When you step out of the draining dynamic, surround yourself with people who show real empathy. Not the performed kind, but the lived kind that's present in consistency, support, and patience. Notice how you feel in their presence, calmer, safer, more at ease. These are the relationships that recharge your emotional battery. Spend time in nature, journaling, meditating, or creating activities that restore rather than consume. Protecting your energy isn't just about what you block out. It's also about what you let in. When you actively fill your life with nurturing connections and grounding practices, the impact of the narcissist's pseudo-empathy lessens. Detachment means releasing the fantasy that you can change them with enough love, patience, or understanding. This is one of the hardest truths for empaths to accept because your gift is seeing the potential in others. But protecting your energy requires you to recognize that their lack of genuine empathy is not something you can fix because it's not yours to carry. The more you try to heal them, the more you bleed yourself dry. Instead, shift your focus inward. Protecting your energy means valuing your own peace more than their approval, your own growth more than their validation, your own reality more than their illusions. In the end, boundaries are not about punishing them. They are about preserving you. Every time you choose silence over overexplaining, detachment over reactivity, distance over constant availability, you reclaim a piece of your spirit. You slowly weaken the hold of their pseudo-empathy and strengthen your own foundation. Protecting your energy does not make you selfish. It makes you sustainable. Because empathy without boundaries is like water poured into sand. It disappears without nourishing anything. But empathy with boundaries,
Calm, steady, and soulful, deep. Boundaries is like water in a vessel. Clear, contained, and life-giving. The narcissist's pseudo-empathy cycle thrives on your exhaustion, on your need to be understood, on your willingness to keep giving in hopes of being seen. But once you set boundaries, once you stop explaining, once you detach from their emotional theatrics, their cycle begins to collapse. And in that collapse, you find your freedom. Protecting your emotional energy isn't just about surviving the presence of a narcissist. It's about reclaiming your right to live with clarity, strength, and peace. It's about remembering that your empathy is sacred, and it deserves to flow where it can truly make a difference. Reflecting reality back to a narcissist who believes they are empathic is both an art and a discipline, because it requires you to hold on to your inner truth while refusing to get tangled in their distorted version of events. Narcissists who claim empathy often build their self-image on the illusion that they are the most caring, intuitive, and understanding person in the room. They truly believe this facade because it feeds their need to feel superior, even in kindness. But when you challenge that illusion directly with arguments, explanations, or emotional outbursts, you end up strengthening their position as they twist your words to reinforce their own narrative. The key is not to battle their story with more story, but to quietly, calmly, and consistently reflect the actual reality back to them without aggression or self-defense. This means sticking to facts instead of feelings, using short and clear statements instead of long explanations, and refusing to be dragged into endless debates that only drain your energy. For example, if they dismiss your pain while claiming they understand you better than anyone, instead of arguing, you can calmly state, "This is how I feel, and I know it to be true." If they accuse you of lacking empathy, you don't need to prove otherwise. You simply allow their words to hang in the air while standing firm in your own awareness of reality. By doing this, you become like a mirror, not fighting, not defending, just showing what is actually there. Over time, this makes their manipulative tactics less effective because they cannot twist what you do not emotionally fuel. The power of reflecting reality lies in its simplicity. It breaks their illusion without giving them the drama they crave, and it protects your dignity by keeping you rooted in truth. In the end, the narcissist may never admit their false empathy, but your clarity and calmness prevent you from being trapped in their illusion, which is the real victory. Empaths, by their very nature, are wired to seek depth, sincerity, and meaning in their relationships. Yet this same openness often becomes the very reason they fall for the act of narcissists who pretend to be empathic. The tragedy lies in how skilled narcissists are at studying human behavior, mimicking emotional responses, and even echoing the very qualities empaths long to see in others. To an empath who thrives on connection and resonance, this mimicry feels like a mirror of their own soul, a moment where they believe they have finally found someone who understands them at their deepest level. But what they are often experiencing is not genuine compassion, but a carefully constructed performance. Narcissists are excellent at observing emotional cues, borrowing language that sounds tender and insightful, and even imitating vulnerability to appear relatable. To an empath, these gestures feel authentic because they themselves would never put on such a mask. They assume others, too, speak from a place of honesty. This misplaced trust blinds them to the subtle cracks in the facade, the moments when the narcissist's empathy suddenly disappears under stress, or when the concern is revealed to be transactional, serving the narcissist's need for admiration and control rather than true care. Empaths often confuse this surface-level imitation with real connection because they project their own sincerity onto the other person, assuming that shared words must mean shared intentions. This is the empath's gift and curse. They see the potential of love so strongly that they overlook the absence of it in practice. The cycle deepens because narcissists know exactly how to feed this illusion, showering the empath with emotional intensity, dramatic declarations, and a sense of destiny, which feels intoxicating to someone who craves soulful bonds.
Over time, the empath begins to sense something is off, but by then, they are emotionally invested and often blame themselves for the cracks they notice, believing they are not giving enough, not patient enough, not loving enough. The truth is, empaths fall for the act not because they are weak, but because their hearts are strong and open. They believe in love so deeply that they fail to recognize when love has been counterfeited. Understanding this pattern is not about silencing their sensitivity, but about learning to pair compassion with discernment, noticing not just the words spoken, but the consistency of actions behind them. When empaths learn to trust patterns over promises, they begin to see through the illusion, breaking free from the trap of false connection and protecting their gift from being exploited. The cost of staying entangled with a narcissist who parades around as though they are empathic is far deeper than most people realize. On the surface, it might just feel like stress, tension, or constant misunderstandings, but beneath that surface lies something much heavier. When you continue to engage with someone who only mimics empathy but does not live it, you begin to pay a price with your emotional well-being. You start questioning your own worth, your feelings, and even your intuition. This happens because narcissists are experts at twisting narratives, making you doubt what you clearly know in your heart. Over time, this repeated cycle chips away at your confidence until you no longer feel grounded in who you are. Mentally, the toll is just as damaging. Being around false empathy is like living in a hall of mirrors. Everything looks distorted, nothing feels steady, and your ability to trust your own mind slowly weakens. You might find yourself overthinking every conversation, replaying their words in your head, and second-guessing your own responses. This constant mental strain leads to exhaustion, anxiety, and sometimes even depression. The brain becomes so used to analyzing and defending that rest no longer feels natural. Spiritually, the damage runs deeper. For empaths and sensitive souls, connection is sacred. To share your inner world with someone who pretends to meet you in that space but secretly manipulates it leaves behind a spiritual wound. It feels like betrayal not just from the person, but from the bond itself. You may start to lose faith in people, in love, and even in the beauty of genuine connection. That disillusionment can make your spirit feel heavier, as though you are carrying the weight of a false bond that was never your own.
The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to pull away. The narcissist's mimicry of empathy creates confusion. They give just enough kindness, just enough understanding to keep you hooked, while taking so much more from you in return. This push and pull dynamic is not love, it is a trap. And in that trap, your energy slowly drains. You give and give, hoping the glimpses of compassion will one day turn real, but they never do. Instead, the cycle repeats until you realize that the cost has been your own peace. Ultimately, staying entangled means sacrificing your clarity, your joy, and your sense of self. Breaking free might feel painful in the moment, but staying costs far more in the long run. The real danger is not that they lack empathy. It's that you slowly lose empathy for yourself while trying to hold on to theirs. And once that happens, you are left hollow, searching for the very thing you were giving away all along.